talk a little bit.
Well, I might do eventually.
Okay. Right. Okay. So last week I sort of introduced the project and didn't really do anything very much. We just sort of set it out for anybody who's interested. So the thing this month is painting or looking towards the light, or what's also known as contre-jour. So it's when you've got something against a light source. So I brought this week. I brought a few books in just to sort of illustrate that, which I was going to bring last week and forgot them all. So I've got a couple of books here, and obviously you're welcome to have a look at these. I'll leave them out on the table somewhere. So this book I got last year when I won some book vouchers. And I quite like this artist's work, Jenny Aitken, her name is. But that would be quite a good example of a painting where the light source is kind of over here somewhere, at the back of the painting, and then objects are thrown into shadow, really. So in this case, there's a lot of reflection of light in the middle of the painting on the water, and then the boats themselves and other things are thrown into shadow. That's sort of one example. So it could be. So it's really a kind of lighting theme. And lighting is a way that we can create some sort of atmosphere, interesting atmosphere. So on a day like this, when the light is really flat, it's not very, it hasn't got a very, it's hard to create some atmosphere out of this sort of lighting. Once you've got some nice bright light or shadows and things like that, it then gets a bit more interesting. So this is an example of like a seascape. So it's a reasonably simple image, so that wouldn't be too difficult to take on. Again, light source back here. You've got reflected light in the water. This one is a woodland scene, and one of the interesting things about things like this, where you've got the light source sort of back here, she's actually sort of painted the trees and the objects around here a little bit lighter than she has the ones further out, and that helps to convey that sort of sense of the light being over there. The other interesting thing is like the way the shadows radiate out from the light source. So you get these sort of dramatic angles, and all these will be different angles. So that's quite interesting. Find some other examples. Let's find that one. No, I can't find the other. There's one of a city, a townscape, which I can't find. Might have to leave that. I'll show. Yeah, no, that's gone. Right, so that's that one. A couple other books. So this is Ken Howard, who some of you have heard of. Have you heard of Ken Howard? Yeah. So he's dead now, but he was a Royal Academician, very successful Royal Academician. And he's an artist that did a lot of work outdoors, and he's been very influential with people like myself who go out paint outdoors a lot. And he uses this device of contre-jour, or painting into the light, quite a lot, or used it quite a lot. So that would be an example of a townscape, a cityscape. And you can see it's almost quite abstract, really. It's like little blobs, and these are people, but they also read as just little blobs of paint. So it almost sort of all blends into the background. And then I picked him because he's, I think that's more the full version of that painting. But he used this device quite a lot. Again, that's a similar sort of thing. That one's a watercolour. And you've got this figure sitting in shadow. And things tend to be put into silhouette. Like the building, it reads as a silhouette. There's a little bit of light and dark, a little bit of subtle contrast in there, but it's mostly quite subtle contrast, really. Find another couple. So things like this is another thing that happens is you can get things that are sort of transparent really tend to glow because you've got the light behind them. These bits really glow out, so I think that's quite interesting. It's lovely, isn't it? And then you get these little dots and dashes of highlights where a little bit lower, maybe the person's in silhouette, but it just catches the shoulders or the tops of the head. So it can be very effective, can be a very strong way of creating an image. So there's quite a few different examples in this book. Again, you can use it as an interior as well. So these are, again, you know, the figures thrown into shadow, and you get these very strong, you know, strong light shapes. So you're aware of more the kind of the shapes that the objects are creating, as well as them being tables and chairs and people. So that's an interesting post to look at. And the last one, I'll just do one picture out here. So this is a chap called Bill Jacklin, and again, really like his work. There's a couple of nice examples here, where he's done things like cityscapes. So these were paintings he did. He's, again, a British artist, Royal Academician. He lives in America. But this was one of the sort of New York, I think, Grand Central Station. So he did a series of paintings of those with all the people filtering in. And again, you've got this sort of, you know, the people almost sort of merge into their shadows. It reads as people and light sources, but it's almost quite abstract. So I think they're lovely paintings, and I thought this could be quite an interesting subject. In terms of the references I've got, I thought I'd use this one today. I've got a few that I've, this little pile that are out of all images that I've, one or two I've printed out recently, others that I've just gathered through my references. But there's probably, within my folders, there's probably images that, you know, are using this sort of idea, this idea of contre-jour, painting into the light. This photo I took a couple of weeks ago in Lee, going down the steps there, just sort of further up there. So yeah, we were out walking the dog on a frosty January morning, and so that's the whole of the photo. I printed that off, and I thought, well, I quite like that, but then this lamppost to me cuts it in half a little bit. So I thought, well, maybe I'll crop in a bit to there. So I did that, and that got me to that one, which again quite like. But I'm thinking, well, you know, are these two similar in shape and size, and do I really need that tree? Maybe that is the subject. Just crop in a little bit further. So I mean, this is what you can do if you get into the habit of taking photos. You can then start tweaking them. You can change the colours, although I didn't change the colours in these. These are just as they were. But I did crop the image and then printed what I wanted. So within any of the images I've got there, if you want to use any of my references, just paint as much of it as interests you. You don't have to take on everything. Quite a lot of my photos, I've already done this process. I go through this process. I'll take loads of photos. I think that morning, just, you know, I took about 30 photos just as I was walking down the steps. And that just happened to be the most interesting one. But you never really know how well it's going to turn out. So it's worth, you know, if you want to create paintings from your own references, take lots of references. Hi, John. Right, okay, so I'll do a quick demo. Now, I've chosen to work so I'm using water mixed with oil paints. I've decided to work on white. I don't normally work on white, but because you've got this nice glowing yellow, if I put a darker colour underneath, it's then sometimes going to have to mix white in with the yellow, or too much white in with the yellow, and it will then start to look a bit chalky. So for that reason, I've decided to work on a white surface, which really means I need to get quite a lot of it into shadow. So I need to paint some dark. So with water mixable oils, or any kind of oils, what I quite like to do is just do some underpainting. So this is very thin down paint, and it doesn't, so I'm just using like a cadmium yellow with a tiny bit of crimson mixed in, and it's really just to stain the canvas and to give me an underpainting. So this is a bit like working with watercolour, and some of this will get absorbed into the canvas anyway. I don't want it really wet, so I kind of need to work this in a little bit. So something a bit like that. What I haven't mentioned is, in terms of the drawing, what I used was a couple of, oh yeah, this is what I tend to use. So these lines here, I've just used a pastel pencil. And the nice thing about that is I can, if bits go wrong, I can very easily wash areas out. I can just completely get rid of them that quickly. Whereas a graphite pencil, I'm going to struggle. It's going to, on canvas, it's all right on paper graphite, but on canvas it's quite hard to shift it. So I find that something like a pastel pencil, could use a bit of charcoal if you want, although it's a bit black. But that's quite a nice thing to use to just plot out the big shapes. So that would be that bit there, and then I'll just do a little, maybe paint just do a little passage here. But basically you get some colour everywhere. Hiya. Hi. Good to see you. We've got a spot just next to Jan. Yep.
I'll just sit here for a minute.
Yeah, sit there for a minute.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right, no worries. Then just working your way down, there's a little bit of blue in there. I've not mixed any white in with the colours, partly because white is a bit slow to dry, and I find that if I just get some colour down to start with, things like browns and blues tend to dry a bit quicker. So I'm just thinking these areas here, I just need to get some colour down, underpainting down, that will dry quickly. Now if you wanted, you could do this with acrylics, because acrylics would dry very quickly, and then that's all dry and you're then ready to do the next layer, if you wanted to do oils. So I'll do something like that. Where the trees are, put some colour. So it's kind of going right up to the top of the image. It doesn't have to be too precise, but it just needs to be just enough to give me an undercoat to paint on. So it's a bit like if you're painting a door bright red or something like that, you might paint a grey undercoat or something just to block out the white. So that would be the tree could go in there. So I'll carry that through. I won't do any more to that just in a minute, but when it came to the next layer, I would then paint a bit thicker. So it might be that I would probably use some white there. So I'll add a little bit of white to this. If anybody wants to try these, we've got plenty of these water mixable oils. So this is where I would, again, start with perhaps a stronger sort of yellowy colour, a nice strong cut.
What are the two yellows that you've used so far?
I've just used cadmium yellow
Cadmium.
and a tiny bit of red mixed in with that, so it's like a crimson red. But that's getting me these sort of nice, slightly darker colours. And there's a little bit of white mixed in with that, but not too much. I want to keep a little bit of that transparency of the white canvas showing through. And the sun itself, I could paint that in a bit brighter. And then the actual tree, let's go back to that brush. It's a mixture of sort of maybe brown and a little bit of red, maybe a tiny bit of blue in there, just to make it slightly purpley. But you're going for sort of stronger, thicker paint that's got better coverage. Perhaps wants to be a little bit browner, a bit more yellow. Yeah, so something a bit more like that. Yeah, so it's a much stronger, thicker paint. So yeah, building up in layers. First bit, sketching it out with pencil, then a little bit of a wash for underpainting, which could use acrylics if you want, and then the next layer, you could do it in one layer or a couple of layers, is using thicker paint, slower, working background to foreground, gradually working forwards. So I'll keep this as a demo maybe for a week and maybe do a bit more to it next week if I haven't got too much further on.
Is that using any medium when you do it like that?
I haven't at the moment. I haven't. You could use a bit of medium if you want to make it flow a little bit better.
Yeah.
You could do. Yeah. Or if you're happy just using the paint as it comes out, if it's reasonably fluid. I tend to sometimes just use it as it is.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Good
And
composition.
any questions?
I like the crop.
The crop, yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Actually, I have a little question.
Yeah.
Conscious shirt, you probably said this 1,000 times, but it's always that the light is behind.
Yeah, sort of it's looking into the light. So it's against the light. It means against the light arrow. So the light source will either be perhaps high up or sort of down here.
Because the ones with the windows indoors weren't strictly like
Yeah.
that, were they? They were more kind of because to the I suppose it's behind. Sorry.
As long as the figure is mostly in shadow, I think it'd be thought of as
Yeah.
conscious.